LUUUUU is officially inducted into the Hall. On today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, we'll be discussing Saturday's 4-2 loss at the hands of the Edmonton Oilers. Roberto Luongo now officially inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, and we're going to preview tonight's game between the Florida Panthers and the Washington Capitals, all on today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into this Tuesday, November 15th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're to our team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. Don't forget to also subscribe to all the shows on the Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, and the newest show on the Locked On Podcast Network, Locked On NHL Prospects. So it's been a little bit since I've spoken to all of you. As if you're watching on the YouTube, you could see that I have a familiar background, as I am back in my home base finally, after being out of state for 9 days, 5 states in 9 days. Throughout all that, went to Chicago with a few buddies of mine and met up with my friend Jack Bushman of Locked On Blackhawks. Then went over east, back to the East Coast to Connecticut to see my family there, where I got to see my cousin, who I've known since birth, get married to what she calls the man of her dreams, even though he is a Boston sports fan that includes Bruins, Patriots, you name it. It was a little bit of a destination wedding where we traveled from Connecticut all the way to Vermont to and a beautiful venue where I got to see my cousin get married out there. So got to drive by Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Vermont. So now for me personally, 20 states that I've visited in the nation. So nice opportunity for me to get away. Of course, did some podcasts on the road while I was away. Didn't always get to see the games live, but thankfully on demand and the evolution of technology allows me to watch games after the fact. Did that with the Carolina game, and of course with the Edmonton game, which happened during the wedding while I was up in the Northeast. But finally back in Florida, and I don't have to wear multiple layers, so I'm very thankful for that. And of course, this being getting back last night, this is my day to kind of decompress, be at home, and of course provide you guys an episode. And that's what you guys come here for. But thank you really from the bottom of my heart for being patient with me throughout all this. Of course, being a solo host has a little bit to do with that, not having a co-host, a consistent one that doesn't hold the fort down. So of course, doing my best to provide some content, and of course, enjoying life outside of this as well. But let's get to Saturday's game for the Florida Panthers versus the Edmonton Oilers. And before that, of course, we knew that the Florida Panthers were going to bring Aaron Ekblad back due to him being healthy from his LTIR stint. The 11 games, 24 days. The criteria is 10 games and 24 days. So Aaron Ekblad did surpassed the 24 days, so he was activated on Saturday. But the player that we were discussing, the players that Nick Fairbanks and I were discussing about who would be placed on waivers, and there was an unlikely person that we saw placed on waivers. Of course, his role was a little bit reduced based on the last few weeks, moved from the second line to the fourth line, and Rudolfs Balcerts placed on waivers. And it's a little bit of a risk when you're so tight up against the cap and you have a player with such upside in Rudolfs Balcerts, a guy who's really tight on the forechecking, someone who's not afraid to get in front of net. Kind of like, it's like another version of Ryan Lomberg, the way I saw Rudolfs Balcerts, just an overall grinder, and placed on waivers. And then by 2 p.m. that we saw that he was claimed by who else? The Tampa Bay Lightning claimed Rudolfs Balcerts. So they saw a guy with really high upside and decided to take advantage of it. Other news and notes for the Panthers as far as lineup is concerned. Patrick Hornquist came back to the lineup. Matthew Tkachuk returned from his suspension. And Anton Lundell was upgraded to the second line. He was placed there along with Sam Reinhart, who's started to get on the scoreboard a little bit lately, even though he was a little bit snake bitten once again against the Edmonton Oilers, and along with Ryan Lomberg. Now we're starting to see that after he earned his extension last season, now a little bit of a more of a bigger role for him, and of course with the great cap hit that Ryan Lomberg brings him as a second line player. I'm not sure how long he's going to stay on that second line, but great to see that Anton Lundell is approaching to being the consistent 2C like we all forecasted once we saw that Bill Zito drafted him 12th overall back in the 2020 draft. And we discussed with Nick Fairbanks back in the offseason, is Anton Lundell ready to become the 2C? And we said no at the time, that Sam Bennett is going to hold the fort a little bit, at least for one more season. At least that was the projection. But it looks like that it's coming at an earlier time than we expected. And if anything that we saw from Saturday from Sam Bennett is any indication of improvement and lighting a fire under him from being demoted, if you want to call it, to the third line center, then that's amazing. I mean, Anton Lundell, we've seen even with Aaron Ekblad being out, that he got some power play one time. Aaron Ekblad was inserted to power play one in his return, something that I thought it was going to take a while. Ekblad was also paired up with Mark Stahl, who both Aaron Ekblad and Mark Stahl got some big stops on breakaways, both by Warren Foegele. We saw a lot of Warren Foegele during his time in Carolina, and Foegele had multiple 2-on-1 attempts, and you saw Mark Stahl and Aaron Ekblad both stop rushes going the other way. Even though Warren Foegele didn't get a star of the game, I felt like he was a very, very impactful player for the Edmonton Oilers on Saturday. And Connor McDavid, only 2 games of his 16 this season, 14, that he was held pointless, and it took until that empty net goal for the Panthers the empty net goal for the Oilers for him to get a point in this one. And really, this game for the Panthers was really won and lost in the first 10 minutes, where Panthers were creating chance after chance after chance. They were working around back to the point on the power play. You had Carter Verhaeghe circling around the net before getting it to Barkov, and just the inability for the Panthers to finish. And even prior to Sam Bennett's 2 goals, which both happened in the third period, Sam Bennett was attacking constantly and right in front of the net. So a very encouraging sign if that is going to be your third line center for the Panthers. They're winning some board battles. Colin White setting up getting a beautiful opportunity in front of the net. Bennett and Eetu Luostarinen were great at setting them up and all. And Spencer Knight with just an amazing stop for the Cats when they were down on the penalty kill. Mark Stahl even got a shot on goal on the penalty kill for the Panthers early on. So the Panthers were really feeling it early on for this team. The fourth line, a very veteran heavy fourth line for the Panthers, and Nick Cousins, Patrick Hornquist, and Eric Stahl didn't give up a single shot on goal for the opposition when playing together at 5-on-5, and they were on the ice for over 6 minutes of time for them. So for the Panthers and for Paul Maurice and company, even though I don't agree with putting Rudolfs Balcerts on waivers and then him getting eventually picked up by the Tampa Bay Lightning, really great overall game 5-on-5 by this fourth line, as they didn't give up a single shot on goal. I mean, 5-on-5 for the Panthers. Just let me look at natural stat trick real quick to see how many shots against they gave up at 5-on-5. I felt like it wasn't really much that they gave up. I mean, 20 shots on goal, 5 at 5-on-5, where really it took that 10-minute stretch for the Oilers on during the second period for them to really get it going. And when you don't capitalize in those first in that 10-minute stretch in the first period where you don't even let Edmonton get a shot on goal, which we've seen the Panthers do this so much this season. I mean, the broadcast, Bally Sports, brought up the fact that the Panthers, as far as rush chances, they've eliminated them. They're second in the league in least amount of rush chances allowed per game, and fifth in the NHL in goals off the rush too. So very impressive by the Florida Panthers and the systems. And Paul Maurice spoke about how he's not worried about the records. I mean, us on the outside, who's not in the locker room every single day, are more worried about the records than Paul Maurice is. But uh, again, Spencer Knight at times was spectacular. On the first goal, Anton Lundell looked to have screened Spencer Knight, getting that goal through. Something that Lundell is going to learn about positioning, so that he gives his goalie another opportunity to see the puck better. But the second one, a little bit inexcusable from Spencer Knight on that one. Tyson Barrie, when a when a third pairing defenseman is the guy getting the goals for the opposition, that's how you know it's not a good night for you. And when you eliminate McDavid and Draisaitl as well. So Tyson Barrie, 2 goals coming from the point. So just I don't know how the deserve a win meter kind of looked like for the Panthers in this one, but just by the eye test alone and seeing the how the first period went, there's so much just left on the table for this. And really, that when the Panthers went through their 10-minute stretch of them not creating a shot on goal, so it was like going back and forth. The Panthers had their stretch, the Oilers had theirs as well. And Edmonton was starting to win their board battles more, winning some faceoffs, and that's really the moment that the Florida Panthers were not able to capitalize off that. That's just how you know that the Panthers were in trouble, especially with 2 of the fastest skaters in the entire NHL. Ekblad created some scoring opportunities, 2 chances on a 4-on-4 as well. Even though Matthew Tkachuk, at least from the eye test, didn't have that killer instinct kind of game for the Panthers, I still think there was more left on the table. He had 5 shots on goal. Bennett, we spoke about him earlier in the show, creating so many chances, led the team in shots on goal, and very encouraging once again if that is your third line center. But one stat that stuck out is the Panthers when they do fall behind in the third period. I mean, we saw how the Panthers last season, when they went to the third period with a lead, they only lost once last season when leading after the third period, and that was a game against the LA Kings last season on the road. And going into the third period this year right now, well, after now Saturday's game, the Panthers are now 0-5-0 in the third period when they trail going into the third. So there's that. There's kind of a trend for the Panthers and where they stand as far as situationally. But again, missed opportunities for the Panthers, and just there was a stat by Jay Fresh Hockey about goals above expected, and the Panthers are last in the NHL in getting their goals above expected, creating so many chances, but just unable to convert. And it's just a little frustrating. I mean, Sam Bennett spoke about after the game as well about being patient, about that the goals are going to go in, but just a little bit too much up and down right now for the Panthers so far this season. And also a rare mistake by Barkov in his own zone. Let's also not forget that as Alexander Barkov was trying to exit his zone, stripped by Vogel, gets it to Draisaitl, and then back to Warren Foegele. So Warren Foegele was just everywhere in this one. Those 2 rushes where Mark Stahl and Ekblad stopped them in 2 different instances, and then creating that steal on Alexander Barkov. Even though the Panthers did have an opportunity to make it back into this game, it was just too little, too late for the Cats. And falling 4-2, second game of this homestand for the Cats, and just one that's really tough to swallow for this Panthers team, as the Edmonton Oilers are now 12-1-0 in their last 13 games now in Sunrise, Florida. So one of those weird fluky stats for the Edmonton Oilers as far as them visiting Sunrise, Florida. So uh, frustrating, but hey, the Panthers do have an opportunity to bounce back tonight against the Washington Capitals. We'll discuss that more in the third segment of the show. But we're going to discuss Roberto Luongo and him being inducted into the Hall of Fame this past weekend, and just lots of excitement around Florida Panthers circles about this induction. But first, we're going to tell you all about BetOnline. And betonline.net is your number one source for all sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get all the latest odds for every professional and amateur league out there, from football, basketball, soccer, esports. We've got all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can find them at betonline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to getting your fix. Visit the website today or use a mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Second segment here on this Tuesday, November 15th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. And Roberto Luongo officially inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. And just everything that went on as far as the festivities, as getting his ring on Friday night and having the Legends game, which was Team Sundin versus Team Lindros, and him scoring 2 goals, including doing the gritty after scoring 2 goals. And Dolphins tight end Mike Gesicki can learn a thing or two about doing the gritty after scoring. But Roberto Luongo's speech really about his parents driving him 5 hours to send him away and making sure that he was feeling safe, staying with his Italian family, talking about how he doesn't go in with a specific team, about which does he represent more, which is Vancouver or Florida. I mean, he is still a resident of Florida, works with the organization, but of course the success, 6 playoff appearances, we talked about it over the summer, 6 playoff appearances, including a Stanley Cup final appearance. He did get he was a finalist for the Vezina multiple times, and should have won in 04 if you really look at the stats about him facing 900 plus more shots than Marty Brodeur. And just the constant professional that Roberto Luongo is on and off the ice, the ability to make fun of himself, like we spoke about with Aaron Brown of the Hockey News just last week, talking about all his personal accomplishments too, about favorite goaltenders to work with. Kevin Weeks, who originally drafted by the Panthers, went to the Islanders to play with Roberto Luongo, and then Roberto Luongo was traded to the Panthers from New York in one of the greatest trades, if not the greatest trade in Florida Panthers history, that also brought Olli Jokinen to the franchise as well. And then just so many great highlight reels plays for Roberto Luongo, even though he was on a lot of bad Panthers teams. And I mean, despite all that, 1,000 games played. Him, Marty Brodeur, Patrick Waugh. Marc-Andre Fleury is going to soon be up there if he doesn't retire after this year. But still, how do you know that goalie wins are not stats? Just look at Roberto Luongo and what he's had to deal with versus someone like Marc-Andre Fleury. I know he has 3 Stanley Cups to his name, but if Roberto Luongo had nearly the team that Marc-Andre Fleury had, just imagine what those wins numbers would look like for Bobby Lou. That it's really the reason why it's a very imperfect stat, and still 489 wins for Roberto Luongo, and in his time, 919 save percentage, 2.52 goals against average, just incredible for Lou. And there was a time where he was playing 70 games throughout his career. Talked a little bit about Noodles, Jamie McClellan as well, talking about how he took a slap shot to the hand, didn't know whether he was going to return, and even though he was playing the majority of the games, and his backup Jamie McClellan, Noodles, even told him, "You're fine." And then, of course, there's a when he was in Vancouver, talk about how how there was a lot of people outside the organization thinking that there was a lot of tension between him and Corey Schneider, about how they're really not enemies, that they, of course, winning a Jennings Trophy together, getting to the Stanley Cup Final together. So there's a lot of clarification as well throughout Roberto Luongo's speech as well. And the most beautiful one, in my opinion, is when when he spoke about Scott Mellenby and him bringing him to a restaurant in near the practice facility in Northern Broward, an Italian restaurant, meeting the owner's daughter, who now happens to be his wife today, along with two kids that he has. So just the community that Roberto Luongo has had since being in Florida. I mean, way back to his first stint, and of course the family moving along with him to Vancouver and then back to Florida, coming back home, and of course that second stint with the Panthers, promise of wanting to get that playoff appearance for the Panthers. And Roberto Luongo was the best player for the Panthers in that 2016 postseason appearance against who else? His former team in the New York Islanders. And it's funny enough, at that time in 2016, the New York Islanders were that team who had the longest playoff drought, who hadn't won a playoff series since the 90s. And Roberto Luongo left it out on the line, his only appearance with the Panthers, and just deserved a lot better. Just the Panthers really just couldn't provide any of the scoring. And the Hall of Famers in this class, the Sedin twins, Herb Carnegie as well, Daniel Alfredson, former Sens captain as well. I mean, Erik Karlsson wrote a long letter through the Players Tribune to Daniel Alfredson, which I gotta get reading on that, just to see how much Erik Karlsson, how much Daniel Alfredson meant to Erik Karlsson right before getting traded to the San Jose Sharks throughout his time with the Ottawa Senators. And Legends game, we spoke about how Roberto Luongo scored twice, and even former Panthers captain Brian McCabe getting on the scoring as well for in the Legends game. So it was just pretty cool all around scenes, at least from what I saw online from Roberto Luongo. And then talk about, in his own words, on what it's meant to get the call. And of course we learned that he learned about it actually a few hours later after it was officially announced, because of course waiting for the call for Bill Zito. So he was just waiting and waiting and waiting for all of that. And the fact that throughout all the down years with the Panthers, all the losing, all the relocation rumors as well, which probably won't go away for a while, because they do have they are contractually obligated to stay in the area at least until 2028. But throughout all of that, the Panthers officially have their first Hall of Famer in Toronto. And we as fans, we haven't seen much success with this team, but we've seen a lot of great individual performances and individual players. I mean, Roberto Luongo, of course, Alexander Barkov, Jonathan Huberdeau, even though he's not with the organization anymore, Olli Jokinen, Stephen Weiss, Thomas Vokoun, and just Ed Jovanovski, and just a lot of individual players, despite the lack of team success throughout its history and advancing far as well. But the first official Panther to really say that this guy, when you think of the Florida Panthers, when you think of Bobby Lou, this is the guy that you think about. Hopefully that, of course, hopefully more players get added to this exclusive club that happen to wear a Florida Panthers sweater the majority of their career. But right now, the one and only is Roberto. And the fact that he's still with the organization in a front office role, spoke about this many times on the show about my one and only interaction with Roberto Luongo was not even hockey related to when I was discussing with him last year at Emily Arena, covering Panthers Lightning in the press box, and then just walking by Roberto Luongo. Only spoke to him for 30 seconds, and the main thing I spoke to him was really about thanking him for that speech when it came to February 14th, 2018, in Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and then his speech to the BB&T Center crowd at the time, just thanking him about that. And that's still to this day my one and only conversation with Roberto Luongo. But seeing the times that I've gone down and see him just walk around in practice, just an overall presence that Roberto Luongo has in this community. Of course, every single game you see him in the suite right at center ice. I believe it's like section 101, 103, around there in that suite, watching every single game along with Bill Zito. And the fact that he's leading the goalie excellence department as well. Him, Rob Tallis, and the fact that it's, at least from last season, it's improved the play of the goaltending. Sergei Bobrovsky having his best season in the Florida Panthers sweater, even though it's kind of a little regressed this season, but still plenty of time for him to make up some in his play. And a young goaltender in Spencer Knight, which they see a lot of upside in, and a guy who's gonna take over as far as the future of the Panthers. But all that and the improvement starts from up top in this department that they exclusively made. And Roberto Luongo influencing the pick of Devin Levi in the 7th round in 2020, which influenced that trade to get Sam Reinhart from the Buffalo Sabres. So there's a little, even though Lou isn't making these personnel moves for the Panthers, he still has a big, big influence on this team. I hope personally that Roberto Luongo doesn't become the general manager of the Panthers or isn't in charge of big major moves, because if stuff goes south, you're going to have to deal with the tough decision to let him go. And I hope that the Panthers, they continue to put him in positions where they don't have to eventually break off their relationship, because the fact that he came back for a second time, even though I didn't get to watch his first stint, I can only imagine the fans who saw him leave and then seeing him back, how much relief there was when he was brought back. All I heard at the time was, "Wow, a Panthers legend is back." Even though I saw him in Vancouver first, as far as when I started watching hockey, but then seeing his second stint and seeing him steal wins for this team is just something very special that I got to see in his second stint with the Panthers. And now seeing him in a different role and shining, as far as being a going under Bill Zito's wing, it's just incredible that he's still very much part of the franchise. And Panthers are celebrating him, the NHL is celebrating him, and we here on Locked On Panthers are definitely celebrating him here. And just once again, a public congratulations to Panthers legend, number one on the ice and number one in your hearts, Roberto Luongo, on being inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. We're gonna try to bring in Alex Baumgartner of 5 Reasons Sports probably sometime later this week to discuss, as he was there in person for the Hall of Fame induction, as he does reside in Toronto. So great opportunity for him. David Dwork of Local 10 was also there. Roy Bellamy and Chris Cody as well. They were all there to cover the event for the Hockey Hall of Fame, and Roberto Luongo, as he is now immortalized in hockey lore up there in Toronto. But in the third and final segment, we are going to discuss tonight's game between the Florida Panthers and the Washington Capitals, and a little bit of news off the ice in relation to the Panthers. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, But first, we're going to tell you all about Simply Safe. And if you thought that securing your home with home security, if you've been thinking about securing your home with home security, but you've been putting it off, you'll want to listen up. Right now, Locked On Panthers listeners can order the number one rated Simply Safe home security system for 50% off. This is the biggest offer of the year, and you won't want to miss it. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and verify the threat is real, so you can get priority police response. Simply Safe is the whole home security with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside and out, smarter ways to detect motion that alert you when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. 24/7 professional monitoring service costs less than $1 a day, less than half the price of ADT's traditional professionally installed system. With the top rated Simply Safe app, stay in complete control of your system. Anytime, anywhere, arm or disarm, unlock for a guest, access your cameras, or adjust system settings. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system I recommend. Get 50% off any new Simply Safe system at simplysafe.com/lockedonnhl. That's simplysafe.com/lockedonnhl. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Third and final segment here on this Tuesday, November 15th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. And the Florida Panthers have a game tonight. Third game of their 5-game homestand. Reverse retros. Let's talk about reverse retros. They'll be on sale at Pantherland starting at 2 p.m. You could start making your way to the arena prior to the game to officially get your reverse retro merch. And from the pictures I've seen on the internet, specifically from Colby Guy of Florida Hockey Now and the Palm Beach Post, Pantherland is filled with reverse retro jerseys. So first come, first serve basis. Go get yours. Even some reverse retro windbreakers, some jackets, some hats. Just incredible, incredible gear for that the Panthers will be selling at Pantherland, and they'll be debuting it on Saturday against the Calgary Flames as Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar will be making their return to Sunrise, Florida. And Jonathan Huberdeau is playing in a third line role now with the Calgary Flames. Daryl Sutter spoke about how it's something that hasn't been working out with Huberdeau playing in the top 6. So the trade's looking really good for the Panthers, but we could discuss that later in the week and save that. But Panthers play the Washington Capitals tonight, a team that the Panthers have been very familiar with over the last few months. Of course, playing them in the playoff series, a 6-game series, a very tough series. The Washington Capitals took away the rush chances for the Panthers, and that's really what made the series last year a lot closer than it should have. And of course, the better team, which with better goaltending as well, was the difference. As Vitek Vanacek started the first 2, Samsonov entered into the third period of game 2 and then started the rest of the way. They couldn't get timely goaltending. They got power play goals. TJ Oshie was the biggest contributor last season in that, and TJ Oshie is not with the Washington Capitals right now, as he is on LTIR for the Caps. The Capitals, they're missing a whole lot of players. Tom Wilson is still missing from the lineup as he tore his ACL in the series last year. So it's really Alexander Ovechkin, Evgeny Kuznetsov, and Anthony Mantha really leading the way for the Caps. We mentioned TJ Oshie. Tom Wilson's out. Dmitry Orlov is out. Nicholas Backstrom out. Connor Brown out. And Carl Hagelin out. So a lot of players missing, and of course, this is a team that most recently won a Stanley Cup, kept their core together after winning, and of course, they're right up against the Cap as teams who consistently contend always do. But when you look at their Cap friendly page and seeing all the defensemen, anyone but John Carlson is going. Everyone but John Carlson's contract expires this year, so lots of chances for the Capitals to kind of reset after next year with a lot of their commitments to or lack of commitments to their defense core. So there's a chance for Alexander Ovechkin to still get some help as trying to at least get one more cup out of him. And of course, he's chasing that goal record of Wayne Gretzky. He's after this year, he'll still have 3 more years on his contract, so that'll take him up to his age 41 or 42 season. So, but the struggle for the Capitals have been scoring goals. You would think that a team with Ovi wouldn't have a hard time scoring goals, but of course the injuries have really mounted up for the Washington Capitals, as there are 22nd in the league in goals for, 15th in goals against. They did get Stanley Cup champion Darcy Kemper from the Colorado Avalanche, but something that I spoke about all offseason is that the Colorado Avalanche won in spite of Darcy Kemper's play. They really protected their goalies, just like the Florida Panthers were starting to see this season, how they're eliminating odd man rushes and chances in their own zone. The Colorado Avalanche did just that in the postseason last year, and of course, they were basically the most dominant team throughout the whole playoffs, only losing 4 times throughout the 2022 postseason. So little bit of for as far as the goaltending, as far as Darcy Kemper, hey, they're looking to improve anywhere that was not Vitek Vanacek or Ilya Samsonov. So Darcy Kemper is their number one for now. Posting decent numbers for the Caps. He's not part of the problem for them. But again, the issue for the Caps has been scoring, and the Panthers, with how they've changed their style this year, as far as style of play, this looks like a very, very good matchup for the Panthers to just take advantage. And if you eliminate, of course, one guy in Ovi, Kuznetsov, and Mantha, if you eliminate Ovi especially, but of course those three who have been the leading scorers, your chances are you're gonna have a good chance of coming out on top in this one. So just everything on paper looks that the Florida Panthers should take this game, as far as, especially now that the Panthers are healthy, and of course with Ekblad coming back, you only have 20 players. Back to the same place that the Cats found themselves in prior to Ekblad's injury, and it's a little frustrating based on, of course, once again, Rudolfs Balcerts being claimed off of waivers by the Tampa Bay Lightning, losing a very high upside player, and just the lack of flexibility that the Panthers have. But we're going to discuss that more later in the week on what the Panthers should do, and kind of did a little math about trading X player, on how it would look on the Panthers cap and what they could do with it. And that's going to be something to discuss later this week. But on tomorrow's episode of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, it'll be a recap edition of the show where we'll be bringing Jacob Winans for another Winans Wednesday edition of the show to discuss the Florida Panthers' game against the Washington Capitals. Some news and notes coming out of Morning Skate is a very, very optional morning skate, but Paul Maurice did confirm as of 10 minutes ago, as of this recording, that Sergei Bobrovsky will be back in net for the Cats. Saw a little bit of a stretch of Spencer Knight starting for 3 straight games, and it's a little bit of easing him in before he officially takes the reins. So this is good for Spencer. Not such a good performance against the Edmonton Oilers, but still starting to get a little bit of the workload necessary for when he is ready to take the reins. As far as distributions of starts, 8 starts for Sergei Bobrovsky, 7 for Knight. So looking a little bit like that 50-50. So there's that as far as that, and we'll look at more of the distribution of starts as the season goes on, and forecast more of what beyond next season will look like, as far as how many starts each person gets in a certain stretch. But once again, tomorrow's Winans Wednesday. Make sure to subscribe on anywhere you listen to podcasts: YouTube, Odyssey, Spotify, Google, Amazon Music. Make sure to subscribe to all of that here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12, where you'll be seeing me live tweet throughout all the games. And also any updates on episodes for the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. So thank you for listening. Make sure to also subscribe to all the shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, and the newest show on the Locked On NHL network, Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure to listen to today's episode of Locked On Sports Today. Locked On Sports Today will give you daily interviews with local experts around the entire sports scene. Catch all the latest hits, hot takes, and the take of the day. Available on Odyssey, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.